Joining us now is Axios national political correspondent Alex Thompson. And all of this, Alex, welcome. It's good to see you. All of this comes after a sort of a series of bizarre polls. I don't know if they're bizarre, but we've had people saying, that the public needs to be reminded of the Donald Trump that they knew a couple of years ago, and they seem to have forgotten. So there's nostalgia setting in, which allows Trump to be up 3, 4, 5 points on polls from CBS or New York Times. It's been a bizarre 2-week period in terms of polls. Do you think any of that, do you think he turned any of it around last night?
Well, I can't really point to a State of the Union address that completely turned around anyone's polls. That being said, I can tell you that Democrats, the word was relief from last night. And honestly, it really didn't matter what Joe Biden said last night. If you're a Democrat, it's how he said it, because every single poll, Americans don't agree on much, but 70 to 80% of Americans in all those polls have said they doubt Biden is capable of serving another 5 years, which is what he is running to do. Last night's speech, well into the evening, he was angry, he was feisty, he stayed late, also taking more selfies with lawmakers. And you saw Democrats really just embrace and rally around him, chanting 4 more years on the House floor. It was notable to me that the president hit a bad high mark last night in terms of his unfavorable numbers are at the highest they've ever been in his presidency. But he did himself a ton of favors last night. So if there is to be a Biden comeback against these polls, which Donald Trump is leading in essentially almost every poll, then a Biden comeback probably started last night.
Just looking at some of as you say, the analysis, what people are saying, there have been certain people in his party that said, talking about what you've done with the economy up to this point and hammering that home again and again and again isn't working. It would probably be better to start talking about what you're going to do and contrast that with Donald Trump. And I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, some of those numbers, not just the 5 points, but some of the other ones, Alex, where 40% of people say they have not been helped by Biden's economic policies. Only 18% feel they've been helped. And we're still dealing with where prices are. That's what the problem is. They may be going up at 3% now, down from 6, 7, 8%. But we've already got the cumulative 20, 30, whatever it is that they went up those first 3 years. When you go to the grocery store and buy eggs and whatever it is you're buying, they're still up, whatever it is, 22%, 23%. And I think, and yet combine that with the border and that you go to any drugstore, you've got to ask for a key to buy anything in any drugstore now. I mean, that's what people notice, I think, which is going to be, that's a difficult problem.
Absolutely. You saw Biden try to split the difference here. Now, to your point, he still was trying to take credit for this economy, something that Democrats have been frustrated about, because to your point, a lot of voters don't give Biden credit for inflation coming down to 3%. They blame Joe Biden for inflation becoming so high in the first place. And just because the rate of inflation is down doesn't mean that prices are lower. To your point, the price of milk and eggs is still sort of an important political metric. And so what you saw is Joe Biden still tried to take credit for his economic record, but you did see him try to turn up a little bit of looking forward. That's why you saw him in those clips that you played talk about raising taxes and talking about Wall Street and talking about basically saying that he would let the Trump tax cuts expire at the end of next year for everyone making over $400,000 a year plus corporations. So he was trying to sort of get in the middle. But I think your point is well taken, that voters aren't giving him credit for inflation being at 3%. They're blaming him for grocery prices being 25% higher.
I think that Zients or whoever wrote that speech or whoever, helped put all of it together was really trying, as you say, to rally Democrats. Because if you're a Republican, there was nothing that he's saying about those policies it's all sort of anathema to what, I mean, I guess that's why we have two parties, but everything that's there, the anti-business, the ridiculous shrinkflation, all that stuff, and it was all populist.
You know what I will say from the clip we just played?
Yeah.
It's like he heard some of the criticism and said, I'm not anti-business, I'm not anti-Wall Street. I bet he ad-libbed those pieces into it to make him seem more moderate than the speech was written.
Than the way it was written. But where I was going at, but Trump's a populist too. He doesn't want to cut spending either. So both of them, we want to blow out the deficit in different ways. One with tax cuts, but neither one want to touch entitlements, and both have a record of a lot of spending. So there's populism on both sides, but no Republican would have watched that last night and said, I'm voting for Biden.
Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about the national debt, then neither of these candidates are really for you, because Joe Biden has basically said that he won't tax anyone making over $400,000 a year. That's a huge tax base. He will raise taxes, or he's pledged that he would. So that could potentially go, to cutting national debt. But he's also pledged to do more spending. So, and then Donald Trump, to your point, is also pledged not to touch entitlements, and has pledged not just to extend the Trump tax cuts, but to potentially, further those cuts. So we're in the middle of election season, and we are right in the midst of both sides pledging complete populist policies. And to your point also about him ad-libbing, there was a ton of ad-libbing in the speech last night. If you go to the prepared remarks versus what he said, there are a number of differences, including notably when he predicted that there will be a soft landing. That was not in the prepared remarks. He completely ad-libbed that. And ultimately, if there is economic turbulence in the next 6 to 8 months, that could end up being the most politically significant line of the speech, because if he predicted a soft landing and there's any disruption, right? Yeah, exactly.